Welcome back to this retrospective slash review for the video game Fallout, which I just finished playing yesterday. And just going to give you some of my quick thoughts about it while I have a video play in the background of me visiting the Brotherhood. So don't think there'll be a huge amount of combat you'll see in the background here, but that's okay. It still lets you get a little bit of an idea of what the game looks like. Probably one of the better looking areas of the game, to be sure, but that's kind of on purpose that I chose this one. But anyway, there's quite a few things I'd like to talk about this game, this being the very first Fallout game that was ever released, not by Bethesda, because this is back when Interplay owned the rights to the Fallout brand name, and basically Interplay was a very big company back in the day before they fell on financial hard times, and Fallout was one of the things that was sold off as part of their financial difficulties. Actually, I don't even know if Interplay's still around. They may be, but I'm not entirely sure. They're definitely not in the same capacity that they used to be. But the developers of the original Fallout, they had a bit of a split. So some of them went to go found the company Troika, and the rest of them continued to work with Black Isle Studios. And then, when Black Isle Studios went under, they formed Obsidian Entertainment. So if you've heard of Obsidian Entertainment, since they are a fairly, I'd say, popular company nowadays, I don't know if they're one of the bigger companies, but they're definitely well known in RPG circles for sure. So this game in and of itself, you can see a lot of the foundations for where that company got its start, or a lot of people involved with Obsidian got their start. So from a historical perspective, it's actually really neat to know the history behind this game, and then of course how the entire Fallout franchise blossomed from it. Now, having said that, obviously you can tell this game is far different from any modern day Fallout game that you're going to see. It's a lot like most of the computer RPGs of the day, where they had the isometric view is very common in most of the games there in the 90s, basically. And it's a view that I guess modern audiences may take some getting used to, but for those of us who grew up with it, this is how most of the games we played were back in the day. So this is kind of par for the course. And I personally do like the art style and everything. It's a very, I know, I guess maybe some people say it's quaint or whatnot. I don't know what the exact terminology you would use to describe it, but I feel that it still holds up fairly well today. Now, when I was playing through the game, I tried to play in a mostly vanilla fashion. So fairly similar to what you would have done back in 1997 when it first came out. Now, having said that, this game is fully patched up, so there was actually multiple patches that came out for it. So I think the version of the game that you see on the title screen is 1.2, which that 1.2 I think is actually because there's an HD patch applied to this game. So as far as the version of Fallout you get with GOG or Steam, this is mostly vanilla, but they did add that one HD resolution patch. But the fact that it's basically already baked into it and done for you means that there's not really a lot that you have to do on your end to get the game up and running, other than obviously configure the graphics settings. So outside of that, it's pretty much install and play and very easy to get going. Now, there are other ways of playing this game. There are fan-made patches that add a lot of content, added a lot of different ways that the game functions, basically. There's one patch in particular that plays this entire game in the Fallout 2 engine. So I kind of wanted to stick mostly with the vanilla experience because I'm planning on playing Fallout 2 here very soon. And, in a way, if you really like this game, there are a lot of reasons to play it again, replay it. There are there's different endings of the game or different results that you can get for beating the game and doing different behaviors. In fact, you can even basically side with the villain of the video game, and there's an ending for that. So if you really like this game, then I would probably suggest maybe first try playing it in the standard vanilla fashion like I did, and then if you want to play through it again, maybe look at trying to do it with some of these other patches. And the one that I think would be the best would be the one where it does play it in the Fallout 2 engine. Of course, having said that, you have to have both Fallout 2 and Fallout 1 installed on your computer to use that patch. But it's definitely something that you may consider. Now, having said that, even if you play it in the Fallout 2 engine, it's not like it's going to be a modern experience because Fallout 2 came out, I want to say like 2 years later, roughly, than this game. So it's not like a huge leap in graphical or gameplay, style. It's still very similar to Fallout, only improved. So, it's not necessary that you play the game in the newer engine. It's not like it's going to make it super modern or anything. But one of the things it may do, and I don't know this for a fact, but perhaps my biggest criticism of the game would be pretty much its the interface. I mean the inventory management. That's what I want to get at. The inventory management of the game is actually by far the worst aspect of the game. It's very clunky, slow, it's sluggish, and that's just something you do have to kind of accept, get used to. Outside of that, sometimes like trying to scroll through the screen, it's just very slow and not very crisp, I would say. And that's probably the biggest criticism that anybody could have for this game pretty easily. I think from a story perspective, the story is actually very good and I enjoy most of it. I think is very well done. So I can't really fault it on that level. And the fact that there are different ways of playing the game depending on how you want to play it. There's a lot of variety with how you can do things. Now, me personally, I was more of a go in guns blazing kind of guy, but at the same time, I was also not doing things like one of the perks or traits, excuse me, I took meant I could shoot faster, but I couldn't do aiming. So I couldn't like aim for someone's eyes or their leg or something and do that. So that's a completely different experience than what I did that you could make use of and probably do better at than I did in that regards, because there's a whole bunch of different traits you can take at the beginning of the game. Some of them are not really good, some of them are better than others. Personally, I feel like the setup I did, I was somewhat following a guide, and I'll put a lot of these guide links in the description. I was somewhat following a guide here and there fairly loosely, and one of them said, here's the way you should set up your character, and I was like, okay, a couple of those ideas sound good, but I made some changes of my own that I felt probably were a little bit better, to be honest with you. Like I focused on getting a lot more criticals, and that was actually, hindsight being 2020, probably a really good idea, to be honest with you, because I had a good 18% chance of getting a critical. So by the time I got towards the end of the game, I was basically laying waste to everybody. So that was definitely pretty neat. I will say that the companions lose their usefulness, probably about halfway through the game. They're not very useful at a certain point, sadly enough. Especially like when you get here to the Brotherhood and you get some good armor for yourself. The only purpose I had for the companions was I need you to carry my junk for me. So they were basically mules, is what they were. Were they good for actual combat purposes? Absolutely not. And as much as it pains me to say it, dog meat was almost completely and totally worthless way before then, because it's like he would actually attack enemies in the game and do no damage. I was like, what are you doing other than barking at him, dude? But I kept him around until he accidentally vaporized himself. Other than that, I kept him around as I did for pretty much all my companions. But to be fair, they're basically pack mules for the second half of the game is really what it boiled down to. And part of that also probably does come down on me, just being a, I guess you collector, or I forget the word for it. Someone who stores up a whole bunch of stuff and doesn't want to get rid of it. That's kind of the way I am in a lot of these games. So I basically did that a lot, and I would make use of my companions to hold everything, but even they would get, burdened with equipment. Having said that, I probably could have just focused on maybe one weapon, because I would usually have like 2 or 3 weapons at least on me at a time so that I could be prepared for any situation. In fact, one of the things that I read in the manual was your weapons could blow up on you. I never saw that happen in the game. And like I said, this is pretty much the vanilla version of the game. So if anything, the manual might have actually misled me to a certain extent, because I probably could have just said, okay, here's my best gun, I'm going to go with it, and not have as much ammo, because I had a lot of ammo on my character throughout most of the game, and that really slowed things down, because once you had to get in there and play the inventory management game, it was just a bit of a slog, to say the least. Outside of that, the actual interface itself is actually pretty intuitive, really. You use the right mouse button to kind of change the different things you want to do. Like if I want to, in combat, if I want to swap from targeting to moving to other sort of things, that's actually pretty intuitive. The one thing I did find that was really weird is like when you wanted to have multiple commands, you would have to hold the left click button on somebody and then scroll with the mouse, like move the mouse up or down to actually select the action you wanted to do, which felt a little bit clunky, to say the least. So once again, it kind of goes back to that whole thing where the interface itself can be a little bit clunky at times, mostly with inventory management, but there are other instances where the interface itself does show a little bit of its age, for lack of a better word. Now, the game itself, I don't want to say it's a guide-heavy game, but it's definitely not a guide-light game either. So it's probably a little bit, in the middle when it comes to how much you're going to need to access a guide. And part of that does go to the interface, once again. For me, for instance, like when I was in the military base, I was having a pretty difficult time there because I didn't realize I could use the repair skill on the little emitters there to turn off the force fields. And I didn't realize that until I was pretty much at the bottom levels. It just wasn't obvious, for lack of a better word. And a lot of times the reason is they would blend things into the background. And when you're playing with these isometric style games, that isn't very obvious to you as a player. So yeah, there were definitely times I had to access a guide to figure things out just to advance. So it's definitely not guide light in that regards, but there are many quests and things in the game that I figured out on my own without using a guide. So there are certain aspects of the game that you can just wing it, as it were, and figure it out on your own. In fact, I would encourage you to try and do that, really. But there are also times where you may hit a brick wall and need some assistance. And in those cases, it's probably a good idea to have a guide available for you to kind of figure out what is it I'm doing wrong. And so the guides I have are actually pretty good in that regards. Like the Fallout Wiki, I think did a lot better of a job of just explaining the different weapons and give you an idea, because they don't even go into very good detail in the manual about the weapons. In fact, I don't even think they even list every item in the game that you can get from a weapon perspective. So just being able to go onto that wiki and say, okay, here's what this gun does, here's what this gun does, and or if you're into melee weapons, what they do, and it would just kind of give you some better idea of what you should be trying to look for from a equipment perspective. There's a lot of items in the game that actually serve no purpose other than just to make money. A good example of that would be, say, Nuka-Cola. Nuka-Cola doesn't even do anything for you, doesn't heal you, doesn't do anything. So that's like an item that is completely, totally expendable, and you can make money for selling it. And now I would say, like, early on, it seems like, money is one of those things that is really hard to come by, but as the game progressed, I was basically drowning in caps. And so that's kind of funny, but early on, these sorts of decisions can make or break things very, very quickly for you. But this game in and of itself, there is one thing that I think, at least for a first playthrough for sure, it is you want to make sure your character's smart. You don't want to like take the pre-built character Max Stone and be a big dummy, because otherwise you're just going to have to go around and pretty much shoot everybody, because they're all going to hate you. It's a little interesting how the charisma stat is kind of pointless in the game, really. In fact, almost all the guides that I followed say put as little as you can into charisma, which you can actually see right here is what I did. I had a very low charisma. But yeah, intelligence, agility, super important, because the higher your agility, the more you get to more actions you can take in combat, which was amazing. Especially the further into the game you got, having a 10 agility was just perfect. So there's a lot of good things there. I mean, maybe I could have taken less perception and more luck. I had an 8 luck and a 10 perception towards the end of the game, so it's splitting hairs at that point, to be honest with you. So outside of a couple of the unobvious things with the game, it's not really super difficult, but there is a factor of luck in the game as well, or bad luck as the case may be, because like even towards the end of the game, like when I went into those rooms with some of the super mutants and I'm just wiping them all out, I opened a door to one room because I was going to go fight some, and this one mutant got a critical hit on me that pretty much did over 100 damage. I think it was like 122, and killed me instantly. So there are certain times where you will get hit, and the critical chance just basically can completely and totally ruin your character. And one of the things that I did when I did level grind against the Deathclaws is it was getting a bit frustrating, to be completely honest with you, because like according to the guide, they got a 5% critical chance, right? Well, they kept critting me over and over and over again. And this is me in, full, power armor gear, and I'm getting critted left and right. I'm just like, what the heck, man? It just seems to be very random at times. So the best course of action is to kill them before they kill you, so they don't get a chance for a critical. So, I mean, the best defense is a good offense, basically. Um, so yeah, I guess I personally feel like with the HD patch that they have with the game, the visuals itself are actually pretty good. Um, the background music is very, what's the word, atmospheric, I would say. I wouldn't say it's great as like the greatest soundtrack ever, but it is very atmospheric, and for that purpose alone, it's actually pretty good. It definitely gives a sense of foreboding to everything that you do in the game. Uh, this game, I think, definitely feels a lot more serious, probably than other Fallout games that came later. It just definitely seems to have a much more serious tone, and throughout the whole game, really. I mean, there are a couple of funny things here and there, but for the most part, it's more serious than it is flippant, to be the best way of describing it, really. Um, and the music probably lends a big factor to that. So the music itself definitely adds to the tone. So it's good, but not outstanding, for lack of a better word. The graphics I still feel hold up even to this day, but they are at times there are certain things that blend in the background, make it hard to see with the stylistic choices. So there is that factor as well. Other than that, I think the game itself is definitely worth playing, especially if you've never played Fallout before, just to see where everything got its start. It's definitely worth playing, and it's not a really long RPG. I took, probably over 30 hours or so in the game, and a lot of that was just because of me sitting there spending a lot of time level grinding, which may or may not have even been necessary, because I just wanted to get that sniper feat, and by the time I got that sniper feat, I was at the end of the game, and I was already laying waste to everybody. So, did I need to do that? Possibly no. So maybe I went super overkill. But yeah, even with me doing all that extra grinding and lugging around a lot of crap that you could probably just completely and totally ignore and be perfectly fine with, um, I still didn't spend a very long time playing the game. So it's not like you're going to be sinking a huge amount of time into this game and then be at the end and say, man, why did I waste all this time for the game? I think it's a good blend, basically, really, of time and what you get out of it. So I think for most people today, it's worth playing, but you will have to take in consideration the interface itself can be clunky. But at the same time, I would probably recommend you play the vanilla version first, and if you like it enough and you want to play it again and try, say, do like a different character, like a melee based character, do different actions, try to be a bad guy, have negative karma rather than good karma, and you want to go back, then try looking into some of those other mods, like the one where you play it in the Fallout 2 engine, and just get a different experience that way. And that's how I would recommend it. But if you only want to play it once, then it may be a good idea to just go straight to using those newer mods and giving it a shot that way. I personally don't know if I'll come back to it. It's a good game, but I kind of want to jump into other games in the series, so I don't know if I'll come back to it or not. But I don't regret playing the game, to say the least. In fact, I would probably, I don't know, it's a hard call for me to give this game a rating that is too high, because, like I said, the interface is one of those things that does pull things down a little bit, and there were parts of the game where I was just completely lost without a guide. So I'd probably give it about, somewhere between an 85% and a 90% score is really what I think I would want to give the game. I don't know, 85% just sounds maybe a little bit too low. At the end of the day, I think the game itself is really good, but at the same time, I think 90% is just perhaps a bit too high of a score as well, because the age of the game, there are certain aspects to it that don't hold up well, and inventory management is by far the worst aspect, and the thing that really hampers this game, hampers a little bit of the enjoyment quite a bit. But other than that, definitely something I would suggest people give a shot. And if you're any fan of the Fallout or anything post-apocalyptic, like post-apocalyptic with a after a nuclear warfare type focus, then this game is definitely something that will be right up your alley. But it also has a little bit of that futuristic element as well, because you're walking around in power suits and whatnot towards the end of the game. So it's definitely really interesting from that perspective. Great storyline. I think the story is something that will definitely appeal to a lot of people. And yeah, you can really get completely and totally overpowered and lay waste to things very easily if you play your cards right. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the game Fallout. And yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.